Welcome to Bonding, a kinky podcast hosted by me, Sarah Butcher, aka Sub in the City. I'm a BDSM coach, kink educator, and proudly collared submissive, with over a decade of experience on the BDSM scene. I'm on a mission to bring BDSM into the 21st century and empower curious kinksters like yourselves to consciously explore what BDSM means to you. In this podcast, you'll hear me talk about all things kink. So whether you're new to the scene or you're a long-standing member of the community, welcome kinksters. I'm looking forward to bonding with you. Hello kinksters, and welcome back to the podcast. So today I've got a very interesting topic that I'd love to talk to you about, which I am using on a daily basis, both in my personal life, with my clients in my therapy practice, and of course when it comes to the world of kink, particularly when it comes to communication. So today I wanted to share with you some of my top tips on tapping into your intuition to help you spot red flags, identify your boundaries, and most importantly, uphold these boundaries. I talk about intuition a lot in my work. Our intuition is that gut feeling, that sense that we can't always tell what it is, but it's a deep knowing that may cause us to make decisions without any seeming logic. And when we follow our intuition, it's often never wrong. Our intuition is there as our internal compass. It's directing us towards the things that are meant for us and away from the things that are not meant for us. When we use this in daily life, it can be an excellent method for living our authentic life. But in today's society, many people are disconnected from their intuition, leading them to live unaligned, inauthentic lives, often trying to please other people. And our intuition can often get confused or muddled with anxiety, fear, judgment, and many other emotions, which is why it can also often get overridden by our thoughts. For example, have you ever met someone for the first time and had a deep sense that there was something off about that person? Perhaps your brain brushed it off and told you not to be so judgmental, or perhaps said person actually did behave in a way that led you to believe they were not genuine or safe, yet once again your brain told you to give them a chance and to not judge so quickly. With a scenario like this, the main way to distinguish between a deeper intuitive sense and a fear-based emotion like anxiety, jealousy, or judgment is to really tap into your body. Because our intuition is felt on a deep cellular level and it taps into our value system and what feels aligned with our authentic selves. When we get that gut feeling, it's going to feel much more assured than a fear-based anxiety. Anxiety, on the other hand, is largely thought-based and often leads to rumination and overthinking. However, if you are someone like me who has struggled at times to implement your boundaries, if you're a self-proclaimed people pleaser, or if you are generally just a member of the British public at least, it's very common for us to put our own feelings to one side in order to not come across as rude or not nice. This desire to be nice is actually dimming the light of so many authentic beings purely because society has given us a set of rules that say we should be this and we should be that. Or we have grown up perhaps in a household where our primary caregivers were not able to self-regulate, which perhaps taught us to bottle up certain emotions, pushing us into a permanent state of fight or flight. Because of this, for some of us, when we do experience an intuitive gut feeling, anxiety can have a clever way of coming in and overriding that sense by overanalyzing the possible consequences of us acting upon that gut feeling. Now, as a woman, I know that this happens for us in particular. You know, a stranger at a bar offers to buy you a drink, your intuitive response is to say no, but pressures of society swoop in and tell you that it would be rude to decline. This has to stop because the more we ignore our intuition to protect other people's feelings, the more disaligned we will feel. Not only that, our intuition is there to protect us from danger. Our body keeps the score and it knows when we're not safe. And when I say safe, I'm talking about safety not just on a physical level, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually, metaphysically. Our intuition is so closely linked with our boundaries, and it's our body's way of alerting us to a boundary being approached or crossed. I personally have had a lot of my personal boundaries pushed and crossed recently in my personal and my work life, and it has been a huge battle between my intuition and my subconscious programming rearing its ugly head in the form of anxiety and fear. One instance, which I'm happy to share with you as it relates to the world of kink and particularly vetting, is that at our most recent Sub in the City social event, we had one guest arrive at the door and I instantly got a pang of intuition telling me this person was not aligned to not just my values, but those of the community. This was then quickly backed up by the way that they spoke to me, their attitude and their behaviour towards me, and this was on entry to the event. I was taken aback by it and I asked them to repeat themselves as I thought maybe I'd misheard them. Nope, they were in fact just being rude. Now at this point, if I had listened to my intuition, I would have politely declined this person entry and possibly even offered them a refund. However, and this is very common, the firefighter in me went into overdrive in those moments, and the social programming to be nice overtook as a way to protect me from exposing myself to more conflict. And so after some back and forth on the door with this person, I did actually let them in. Later, the manager of the bar came over to me and said that she'd been keeping an eye on this person all night because she also had the same gut feeling. Sure enough, this person continued to be rude and inappropriate. Thankfully, this was only to me and other staff, not any of our Sub in the City guests or attendees. And so they were eventually removed without causing any kind of disturbance to anyone there, but it was something that I was aware of. This is the only time I've ever had to ask someone to leave one of my events, and it's been a huge lesson for me. Trust my intuition. If something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And I'm telling you this because creating and maintaining a relationship with your intuition is an ongoing process. It's not a muscle you need to train as it's always there, but you do have to work hard to separate all the other noise so you can create a clear, fluid connection to it. And you have to work on learning to listen to it. While our intuition will always be there to guide us, only we can take the aligned action to support that guidance. And the reason I'm sharing this example with you is because you do not need to wait for something to justify your intuition. You do not need to wait for that penny to drop. You do not need a reason to set a boundary with someone. If you feel it in your body, if you feel that deep knowing that something isn't right, as I said, it likely isn't. And so what you might find is that later down the line, something happens that justifies your intuition and you're like, there it is. I should have trusted my intuition. But we don't need to wait for that intuition to manifest in someone else's behavior, in what they say, in something happening. We can just trust it in that moment and move forwards with that. What can also happen is that we get anxiety confused with intuition. So we might get anxious about a date and find a million reasons not to go and tell ourselves it's intuition, or look for 1,000,001 things and call them signs. This is very clearly a fear-based response, and for that we should be curious about where that fear is coming from and tend to it with love and compassion. But it will most likely be an urgent type of energy when it's our anxiety talking. Intuition, as I say, will feel much calmer, more grounded and rooted in the present moment, with the message being delivered in a much softer manner than anxiety. So of course you can see how useful this can be in a kink context when harnessed correctly. When exploring our kinks, we are exposing ourselves and opening ourselves up to vulnerability. And so intuition is going to be really important in keeping us safe, but no doubt anxiety is also going to show up to the party whenever vulnerability is supposed to make an appearance. That's our ego being the overprotective sibling to our authentic self. So when starting out in kink, one of the common mistakes I see, and I saw it in myself too, was being off balance with my intuition. On the one hand, there's being too closed off, too cautious and scared to let down your walls. And on the other, there's being too open, too generous with your vulnerability and exposing yourself to emotional or physical hurt from the wrong people. For subs out there, you may have heard this described as sub frenzy. So the goal is to find a balance where you can align with your intuition and connect and interact with others in the kink community from a more grounded and centered place. Not leading too much with your head, not leading too much with your heart, but finding a perfect balance of trusting that deep sense of knowing and letting it guide you through your experiences. And how do you do this, I hear you ask? Well, like I said, it doesn't always come so easy, particularly with all the other noise that can be floating around in our head and our heart. So the main thing I always say is spend time getting to know yourself, your values, what you want to feel and experience in the world of kink. Get super clear on that. If you are seeking a partner to play with or build a relationship with, the next part is also work on your worthiness. Believing you are worthy of what you want may seem easy on the surface, but whenever we push our boundaries just that little bit further, or we stay with someone when we know we're not right for each other, when we say yes to things that don't truly make us happy just to please someone else, this is all rooted in our level of self-worth we have in that moment of time. So notice this. When we ignore our intuition, it's a sign to do some work on self-compassion and boundary setting. And when we stop saying yes to please other people all the time, this builds our resilience and it lets our mind, body and soul know that we are realigning to our true values. Doing this also takes the courage to be disliked and to learn that being disliked does not have an impact on your worth. Setting boundaries is going to cause disappointment, upset, heartbreak, and many uncomfortable emotions in people, but they will also evoke respect, admiration, and gratitude in others. Either way, this is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself and yourself only. You can only control your behaviour, actions, and choices. It can also be very tempting to make decisions from a place of fear, and you may not even realise you're doing it. Moving from a place of fear can look like overthinking past situations or trying to predict future outcomes as a way of making a decision. While I totally understand that this can be natural if you've had bad past experiences, this is also an indicator that your nervous system is dysregulated and in a state of fight or flight. If you have trouble making decisions, then you may be in a freeze state. If you find your natural response is to say no to everything and put your walls up, you may be in a fight or flight state. And if your natural response is to say yes to everything, but from a place of fear rather than genuine and willing openness, then you are likely in a fawn state, which is a state of appeasing to pacify any potential conflict. So start to get curious about the narrative that's playing out when you find yourself overstretching your boundaries, or allow someone to behave in a way that doesn't feel like it sits right with you. Start to notice the deeper messages beneath the noisy chatter of the monkey mind, as we call it, and as you do, notice that chatter dissipate. You are the expert of your world. No one can tell you what you should and should not tolerate, allow, or accept. Our bodies keep the score and know exactly when something is not right for us. And as I say, these intuitive messages may feel hazy or quiet at first, but as you start to separate your thoughts, it will become easier to receive the messages your intuition is sending you. This is especially important to tap into when vetting a potential kink partner and when playing with other people too. As I mentioned sub-frenzy earlier, subs may push their boundaries and go beyond what feels good for them purely because they're wanting to have submissive experiences or feel that they have to prove themselves as a good submissive. But this happens to tops too. It happens to everyone. It's very common for tops to feel they have to push beyond their boundaries to meet a request from a submissive. And again, this is where listening to your intuition is going to be key. A respectful partner is not going to disrupt your nervous system. They are going to be grateful for you asserting your boundaries and listening to your gut instinct. Our intuition is what moves us at the pace that is right for us. And of course, this doesn't just apply in kink contexts, but in all of our actions and decisions in life. It's just that within the world of kink, we can get a really good opportunity to practice flexing this wonderful, magical muscle of ours. So in those moments when you're not sure or it feels difficult to make a decision, I just want you to take a step back. Take a step back if you can, close your eyes, slow down your breathing, and just tune in. Tune in to what your body is telling you. And ask yourself, what aligned action can you take in that moment to ensure that you are moving from a place of your intuition, your gut instinct, and your primary values system. That's all from me today. I hope this episode helps you in becoming more conscious in your kinky exploration. And as always, if you have any questions or anything you'd like to hear more of, just drop me an email. Much love, and I'll catch you next time. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your friends. And if you want to continue to consciously explore your kinks, be sure to check out my upcoming workshops and events at subinthecity.com/events, or book your one-to-one BDSM exploratory session with me today at subinthecity.com/booking.